So for the third video for the module on the sports tourism development process, we're going to talk about the process of tourism planning that is specific to sports tourism. So I tried looking for a Philippine-based sports tourism development guide, but I wasn't able to find one. Probably there's not one that exists in the Philippines just yet. But I was able to find something from Canada Sport Tourism Alliance, and they had a sports tourism planning template that was also community-based, so which is nice. So in the Canadian sports tourism planning template, there are actually 4 stages that were mentioned, and these are expanding knowledge on sports tourism, assessing community capacity, setting objectives and building a vision, and building a strategic approach. If you notice, the stages are not so different from the stages that was set by the DOT guide. The one that's missing only is number 5, which is the monitoring and evaluation scheme. But I feel like we can also apply that here as well. So first stage, according to the template, is expanding knowledge on sports tourism. So it's important that those who are included in the decision making for this plan must know the different dimensions of a sports tourism event that can be held in their given locality. So they should know how many number of participants are expected to be attending, number of those who will be spectators, length of event, frequency of the event given a period of time like a year, caliber and status of the event, and the legacy of the event. Event legacy means after the event has been done, the facilities that will be built, will they be used in the future for future tourists or to locals who wants to practice their sport? No, for an example of criteria on event legacy is the Clark Aquatic Stadium that we have, right? So it was built for the Olympics, but its legacy will live on even after the SEA Games has been done. Also, it's important to know the different types of sports events that could be possible attractions that are held in a given community or location. So we can have multi-sport events. So these examples are SEA Games, Olympics. We also have professional sport events, could be single sport events but are part of the league. No? For example, FIBA. And then we also have invitational events, no? For example, the exhibition games. And then we also have created events. And these are events that were created by the community, and they will just invite people to be part of that sporting event. And then we also have non-competitive events like, for example, trainings and sports planning. And then also, it's important to identify the magnitude of the event in terms of its scope. So there could be regional games, provincial games, national games, or international games. And of course, the extent of planning that we need to have in relation to these events is based on, of course, the magnitude of the scope. Also, who should be involved in sports tourism planning? So, based on the template, I would say that it includes, all stakeholders mentioned in the DOT LGU manual that we were able to discuss in the previous video. Just including academia, of course, because they're also very active, in contributing to building sports events. And of course, this time, kailangan nang i-include yung specific LGU sport council, no? Yung sports committee dapat nandoon din in the decision-making table. According to the Canadian template, the next step after expanding the knowledge is assessing community capacity, capacity of the locality to hold such event or to hold such sport attraction. So this is similar to the analyzing of the situation and identification of the problem in the DOT manual, but this specifically looks into sports, in the context of sports. So, tanggal na muna natin si cultural, heritage, gastronomic, dark tourism, or ecotourism. Our question here is really more on the sports and sports tourism potentials. So first, we analyze the institutions, the community. What are the strengths and the weaknesses of the community? What are the establishments that are available? What is the economic level of the community? What is the demography of the community? Who are the locals? What are the different categories found in the locals, and how can that potentially help or disrupt a sports attraction? After looking at the capacities of the community in general, we now look at the tourism systems found in the locality. What are the weaknesses and the strengths of the tourism? So we look at the transport system found in the community. We look at the number of accommodations available. We look at the number of tour-related agencies and tour operators in the community that can basically help us in setting up a good tourism system to go about or to put the context of the sports event that we are trying to plan. Next, we also analyze the sport event, which is basically going to be held in the locality. Okay? And we just go back to the different criteria we have mentioned earlier. How many will be participating? Is this going to be international? How many spectators? What facilities will be needed? Do we have specific facilities needed for this sport, etc., etc.? Next, we also look for the sports strengths and potentials in the locality. What are the sports that the locals in that area are good at? Right? And based on the characteristics of the people living in that community and based on the characteristic of that locality's topography, what could be possible sports that this community could excel in and probably create an attraction out of? And then we look at the available facilities related to sport. So we look, is there a stadium available for football? Is there a track and field? So that we would know, can our community or can our city or locality be a venue for a future multi-event sport or training event for sport, or a created event or an invitational event or a national event, etc., etc. Because again, if we want to market our locality as a potential sports tourist destination, we have to make sure that we have facilities available for us. Next, we have also the accommodations profile. And this is not just, how many hotels do we have, but this is really analyzing what is the usual occupancy rate of each hotel for every month. Why is this important? Because again, remember, when there's a good or a big sport event happening in a community or in a locality, and this is really good and it becomes a sports attraction, the tendency is that tourists would flock to that area. Now, when they flock to that area, we have to make sure that we have enough accommodations available. And the reason why we have to do an accommodations profiling prior to the holding of an event is because we want to make sure that we have enough accommodations to accommodate the flock of tourists that would be coming in. Now, it will also help us in terms of when we do our created events or invitational events. It's important also to know about the accommodation profile across the year so that we would know when to schedule. No, so definitely we won't schedule during peak months, like definitely no sports activities during December, because the expectation is during December accommodation profile is really high in all hotels. So definitely that will not be a good time for us to do a sporting activity that draws in tourists, etc., etc. And also probably a part of the accommodations profile is Are there hotels that are near hospitals? Because definitely, if we're going to plan the tourism and transport systems in a given multi-sport event, it's important that we house our international players in hotels near the establishments that they need in order for them to perform well in their sport. So definitely, yung mga good hotels that probably has a gym, and those that are near the hospital and also near basic essentials must be prioritized in these types of accommodations kasi nga need nga nila. The next step, according to the Canadian template, is setting objectives and building a vision. So, the name is just changed, or the title has just changed, but this is very much similar to the DOT LGU manual on setting goals and objectives. This is just virtually the same. So, I think it's important that we do or we apply the same logic. You know, we set goals, and we align them with short-term objectives, and then we align them with targets, we align them with success indicators. And I think we can already go above ourselves, and we can already set up monitoring schemes in relation to that, you know, especially when we've identified our strategies. But according to the CADECHA template, what's different is that we also have to look into the specific visions, not only for a general vision, but also of the vision of the different stakeholders. Like, for example, sports organizations may also have their own vision and goal in relation to the event that they're going to be holding. Academia might have a different goal, and the other participating sectors might have their vision. So it's important that we also consolidate the visions together so that, you know, all goals and all visions are laid out in that plan. Now, after the goals have been set and it was paired with objectives, and we have already identified targets and success indicators, and probably we have also identified monitoring schemes, the next step, according to the Canadian template, is to build a strategic approach in order to achieve those goals. And actually, in our previous discussions, we have already discussed some factors and some actual strategies, you know, and we've already discussed that in our previous wrap-up sessions, no, in our lessons. And most of the strategies we have already discussed in our sports tourism markets lesson, like how do we identify possible markets, you know, and also sports tourism experiences. How do we make sure that the visitors have the best experience while they're here, right? But also, that's just one part or one sector of strategies that we can use, and probably programs and projects that we can execute in order for us to realize our goals. We will be studying more strategies in the future modules. So in future modules, we will be talking about how do we strategize the geographical location of our community that is going to hold a sports tourism event, and also how do we manage the time in relation to sports and tourism. So in this video, we have discussed a bit the Canadian Sports Tourism Planning Template, and we have discussed the 4 steps that communities and localities can do just in case they want to set up a sports event or a sports tourism attraction in their area, or capacitate their destination in order for it to become a sports tourism destination. I will be also including in the module the template so that you will be able to see the worksheets that could be used in order for the community to do their self-assessment, to do their accommodations profile, their facilities profile, and their sports resume, etc., etc.